Thanks. Good morning, folks. Um, so we'll get started. You guys know me. I'm Stephanie from the Collaborative. And what was my favorite wildlife sighting or nature moment this summer? Actually, I think you guys are going to see a picture of it later. It might just be when we were on the bikeway just a couple days ago. We were going in one direction, we saw a great blue heron, and we stopped and we watched it for a little bit. And then when we turned around to go the other way, it was still there. And it jumped into the water at one point to get a fish, and then jumped back out and fluffed its feathers and hung out for a minute and then flew off. And it was, I think, the closest I've ever been to a great blue heron. It was what, maybe 20 feet away, Kaylee? Yeah,
Yeah, it was so close.
it
It
was
was
very cool.
definitely the closest I've been to one.
Yeah, they've kind of flown overhead or you see them on the side, but it really hung out for a long time. So that was a good one. And I will hand it to Kaylee.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kaylee McLaren. I'm the restoration manager at the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative. Um, I have two. The first is I saw an American oyster catcher, and I wasn't sure what it was when I got the thumbs up from Kate, so that's how I know it was a cool sighting. Uh, it was actually on the Jersey Shore. I was on vacation in June there, and I saw it and I was like, "What is that?" And I got to learn a new bird, so that was cool. And then the other cool thing I saw was a gray fox in my neighborhood, actually. It was right kind of at dusk, and yeah, just randomly like in the street, and we were like looking at each other, just like not no one making any sudden movements, and I got a picture of it. It was pretty cool.
Nice. Thanks, Kaylee. David, do you want to go next?
Yeah, Dave Tapscott, Uxbridge Board of Health and MVP coordinator. Um, I also have two. One earlier this summer, I saw a pileated in our maple tree. I'd been hearing it, and then I saw it fly in and fly out. I couldn't. The maple wasn't good enough for it. Basically, it had no food in it, so it just flew away. And the other I just thought of is so exciting to see the dam removal and to see the stream flowing and sort of rechanneling. That was very exciting. So yeah, that's it.
Great. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
How about Dave?
Hi, I'm Dave Grenier. I'm from 124 Productions. I This might be some recency bias, but just the other day when I was doing the scouting for the paddle, uh, for Source to Sea paddle, I was in the woods and it was just like it was I actually made it real because it was incredible. I don't know, just seeing the roots and the different diversity of the forest, and then in that same area, not too far from it, I saw a chipmunk that just froze because I'm walking by it, but it was just like it's the simple things and it's stuff that I didn't have when I lived in California for a while. So like being back home and like seeing it's just a chipmunk. He's just chilling. He's just sitting on the rock and just wondering what I'm gonna do. But just just enjoying the little hike, which was part of my job for the day. So I just that kind of stuff. I just love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. How about Kate, followed by Judy, Danielle, Sarah?
Sure. I'm gonna surprise well, my name is Kate McPherson. I'm Save the Basin Narragansett Bay River Keeper. And I'm gonna surprise everyone because my favorite wildlife sighting this summer is not a bird. I found a katydid, which are these
Hey.
Oh, wow.
huge bugs from like the tip of their tail to and their antenna extend all the way back. Their antenna are longer than their bodies. And so I learned that I found a male katydid. Those are the ones that go katydid, katydid. And it was hanging out on my electric fence, and it was just vibing. And then it was on my chicken coop. So appreciation for all of the insects that are making all of the lovely noise at night. I really
Mhm.
appreciate this time of year and the night noises. So
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Good morning, everybody. Judy Rondo. I'm the Non-Point Source Outreach Coordinator with the Watershed Planning Program at Mass DEP. Um, and I guess my favorite wildlife sighting, I have two, and I kind of suspect that they're linked. We've had a ton of wild turkeys in the vicinity of our house this summer. I don't know why, whether something special about this winter, or the trees producing nuts, or what. But it seems like every time I look out the window, I see a turkey or a group of turkeys, and I've seen the poults, the mothers with the poults. So that's been really neat watching them show up and then grow over the course of the summer. And then the second was that for about a week or so, we had a coyote in the yard.
Mhm.
And I didn't catch it in person, but I kept catching it on our cameras. And I don't know if there's a connection between the turkeys and the coyote, but maybe. So that was kind of fun.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle Moore. I'm the Watershed Outreach Manager for the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program. And Judy and I must be on the same wavelength because I was thinking about wild turkeys as well. In my backyard, we had a family of turkeys, and there was like 10 of the baby ones. And I realized I've never seen them that small before. So I think that was really neat. Definitely kept my distance, but it was cool to see.
I think it's my turn. I'm Cheryl Tony Holly. I'm from the Hassimisco Band. Um, I don't know about a favorite one. I've seen several deer who seem irritated at my presence. And I think the most frustrating one was we have a family of turkeys at the reservation, like five of the biggest things I've ever seen. And they just stand there, just eat up all the strawberries, and they don't even care that, that I'm there saying, please don't. They just do. So I don't know about a favorite, but those are my two most frustrating, I guess.
Thanks, Cheryl. How about Sarah, Danica, Kelly, and Steve?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Bertrand with Mass Audubon out of Broad Meadowbrook Wildlife Sanctuary in Worcester. And I would say I love water. I love being in the water. I love water and like immersing myself in water in the summer. And I have like more lake, pond, and ocean experience than I do river experience. So this summer was really the first time I spent um like in a river, and I was in the Nashua River tubing on like dollar store tubes. So we did experience, some a pop and immersion into that river unintentionally, but that just was such I felt like a different way of experiencing being in water and like being moved by the water and like observing the shorelines. And so that was a highlight for me this summer.
Yeah, I love that.
Hi, I'm Danica. I'm the SNP Network liaison. So SNP is the Southeast New England Program Network. And my favorite moment was actually at the start of the summer. It was really like spring. One weekend we like made a spontaneous decision to go to the beach. And so I live in Dighton, Massachusetts, and the closest beach is Westport. And I wish we went more, but it's just like a little far to get to. And it was like that like in like spring when it's like just starting to get warm, we had this like random really nice day and we were like, let's go to the beach. And we went to what's it called? Horseneck Beach in Westport. And as we got there, it was also like our first time bringing our daughter to the beach, who's turning 2 today. So I was really excited to bring her. And as we got there and got out of our car and we're walking to the beach, like this giant osprey flew overhead with a big fish in its talons. And I was like, wow, we're here. Like I just felt like we were greeted by this really cool osprey. I really enjoyed that. And then there were a lot of birds on the beach. We saw what are they? Not sandpipers, maybe, I think we saw. I don't remember now. I think that's what they were. But there were like a lot of birds and wildlife there, and it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like a good one. Good way to welcome the warm weather.
Hi everyone, Kelly King. I'm an environmental planner with the Horsey Witten Group, and my favorite wildlife sighting, I was down in Block Island for sort of the annual pilgrimage as a Rhode Islander, up by the North Lighthouse during seagull nesting and chick season, and so got to see tons of tiny little baby seagulls, which are much cuter when they're not trying to steal your sandwich on the beach on mainland Rhode Island beaches. So that was a highlight.
Nice. Thanks, Kelly. Steve, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name's Steve Croto. I'm on the Uxbridge Conservation Commission. I don't have a favorite sighting this year. I try to get into the woods or on the river every single day I possibly can. I have hundreds of pictures of deer and eagles and owls and I'm just fortunate that I live where I live. Uxbridge, Massachusetts is one of the most beautiful areas in the state. It's really underrated. People don't understand how beautiful it actually is and the amount of wildlife that is actually here. So I just wanted that I don't have a favorite. It's just every day's a favorite.
Love it. Yeah, Uxbridge is definitely a really beautiful area, particularly the one that I know you know and I know is along the Blackstone River. So that's great. Rama, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Somehow my video is not showing up,
That's
but
okay. We can hear you.
my name is Rama Pulicharla. I'm an emerging contaminants coordinator and watershed planning program within Master EP. So coming to my favorite wildlife and nature moment. So this year I did go to electrofishing and it was beautiful. For the first time I was seeing a lot of fish when you introduce electricity in the water kind of coming up. It was like a moment I never forget how fish react in the water when you kind of introduce electricity in the water. Nice seeing you all. This is my first meeting, I believe.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So, from here, I'm actually going to hand it to Dave and David. We recently were at a presentation about, or actually not about Homebrew Dam, about a different dam, and there were two Bobs there, and they said they called themselves Bob Squared. So now we're proposing we've got Dave Squared here, and they're going to talk about the Homebrew Dam removal project. This is what the dam looked like beforehand. And for anyone who came expecting a talk on PFAS, apologies that Anna Roebuck had to reschedule, but she'll be back on our agenda in December to talk about PFAS. So I will stop sharing and I will hand it to you guys.
And David, you're muted.
Yeah, better.
There you go.
Okay. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
We're not in
Okay.
presentation mode yet, but yes.
Not in presentation mode. How do I do that?
On the very bottom right,
Yeah.
and then, yep, over just a little bit to the right. The one, yep, one more on the right. Yep, that one.
There we go. Hey. Oh, that's cool. Thank you,
Perfect.
Steph.
Very welcome.
Okay. Okay. So this is about the saga of this poor little dam here that got named out of the sort of default because nobody knew where it came from. It was called Homebrew. It arose actually the name from part of an MVP project. So it was sort of a forgotten dam. It's not visible. It wasn't registered with the state or anything like that, but it was there. And it's on this brook that comes from Mendon called uh, Meadowbrook. And this is these are shots of the dam. This one over here is, let's stop, about 3 years ago, I think, and it's deteriorated substantially since then just due to weathering. But this is sort of what it looks like. This is a downstream view, and up here is the impoundment that you can see. And I did some, sort of trolling into the local history of it and found that Some people think it was built in the 40s by the guy who ran the water division for the town, and it's on town land, and he wanted to make a fishing hole. So he built this dam, and as you might be able to see, it's just a conglomerate of there's some concrete here, there's a block here, there's wood here, there's pipes here. So he just sort of, whoever built this, just sort of threw in everything. And it was a part of MVP, which started really MVP, one of the original MVP grants action grants that Uxbridge got in fiscal year 22 was to do an inventory of all the dams and culverts in Uxbridge. It was pretty extensive, and then they did a rating of which dams needed the most attention. And there were two of them. Home Brew was one of them. The other one, White and Pond Dam, so whole other story. But Home Brew rose to the top in terms of, well, this would be an interesting dam to pay attention to in terms of its removal. It served no particular function, maybe as a fishing hole creation, but that was about it. Then in fiscal year 23, we did thanks to our crackerjack consultants at Fuss and O'Neill and everybody else, we did a feasibility study and went through the whole permitting process for removal of this dam. And got to the point where we were saying, okay, everything's ready, let's do it. And then we had to pause because the local politics got sort of confused. I ended up presenting to the select board and was presenting two dams at once, and it was sort of like, okay, what are we doing here? And there was a pause based on confusion, I think, in cost to the town. And in this past fiscal year, actually, thanks to some changes in MVP policy and availability of money, presented the removal again. And because primarily, I think because there weren't any matching funds required from the town, and also because they would fund this grant through some upfront money, which made things a lot easier. It got approved and the work started. And part of the action grant, is to do a lot of community engagement. And we've had some good partners here. Blackstone River Watershed Association has been, Heather and Joanne have been wonderful in terms of their reaching out into the school system. Over here is sort of their model of a watershed. And these are middle school students who are involved with, they planted some pollution sources on this it's a 3D sort of platform, and the river runs right through it, and then they spray on rain and watch the pollution go into the river, and it's pretty nice hands-on learning experience for what a watershed is. The other part of the community engagement, in addition to presentations, have been a before and after, pre and post removal, water quality monitoring, which was already being done by the VRWA, but they're making special efforts to do it. What did the water quality look like before the dam was removed, and what did it look like after? And in addition, studying the bugs. There's a program that they do called Bugs of the Blackstone, and this was a before removal project that took place in June, where a bunch of people, citizen scientists, got involved with identifying macroinvertebrates that lived in the river. And this is a picture of some of us sort of looking at the bugs. The other part of the community engagement has been thanks to this organization, Blackstone Watershed Collaborative. And in June, they essentially led an effort to present this to the community at large. It was basically a review of what was going on at the Homebrew Dam, some education about dams in general. The engineers presented a detailed sort of report about how it was going to be done, and then uh, Blackstone River Watershed Association talked about their elements too of community engagement. And part of the community engagement is to document this. It's basically we thought was the first removal of a dam in the Blackstone Watershed Association, but we got preempted by the state, who had already done some work in Sutton to remove dams up there, which is also part of the watershed, and the Mumford River, the other side of the Blackstone. But thinking that this could be a good project because it was relatively simple, meaning it was on town land. There weren't any ownership or legal questions, which, as people probably know, can be very daunting. So there weren't any questions about that, about getting permission to remove this dam. So and it was small. So we thought it would be an ideal thing to document as a case study for other people to look at, not just for public consumption, but for other practitioners who are engaged or who want to engage in dam removal in their communities or municipalities. And we engaged 124 Productions, Dave Grenier, who will follow this sort of walkthrough of the events with some of the work that he's been doing, mostly with video and photography. And then many layers. This required coordination with many layers. The engineering and guidance we got from these people at Truly Ecological is just phenomenal. And their logo for their new company is "Coming to a restoration site near you." And this is a picture of Julie Busa, who's been with us basically for years and working with Uxbridge and me and all the other partners. And this is her partner, business partner. What's his name? I forget. Anyway, he's getting his boots wet, and this is what you want with consultants: people that are really wanting to get involved and who can smile the whole way down. The other partners that we've worked with, I mean, MVP has been the source of the money. This grant totaled $458,310, and it's part of the MVP program, their action grants, which have been funded by the government for several years with increasing funds. And they also, just to put in a plug for them, they've developed a permitting sort of platform for different grants from a state called Eco One Stop, and I haven't used it yet, but it's supposedly, will speed up the permitting process and streamline it quite a bit. And working with the MVP program, especially Hillary King, has been she's a wonderful partner to work with. And these are the local people that have been involved, many layers. Paul Hudnack from the Department of Public Works has been instrumental. Steve Setti, our town manager, our accountant, we've needed to involve local accountant work. Select board needed to give their permission and their endorsement of the project. The Concom, especially Jeff Shaw, but I misspelled Emily's name, and his predecessor, Emily Petro, who was the conservation agent, have been working with us all along. And in the Board of Health, sort of my nominal position. Well, it's more than nominal. It's a position with the town of Uxbridge, and our former director, Aaron Hightower, and Missy, who's our admin, and then the present director, have all been incredibly helpful. So I would say, looking at and sort of preparing this presentation, I don't know if you could see me here. That didn't work.
We see the slide says lessons learned so far.
You see the slides so far?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay. There you go. Okay. So what does this a project like this need? Well, it needs a hub. It's vision, stamina, and patience, and I think that's been my role actually. And this is sort of what you have to put up with. There's a tarantula on my shoulder, but I'm smiling anyway. Um, so that kind of an attitude helps. Um, Experienced and committed consultants, especially with Julie and Michael. Michael's her business partner. They've been absolutely wonderful, as has been the construction company that some people named Sumco who really know what they're doing in terms of dam removal. Um, the other thing that I've learned a lot of is that, especially with a sister project, the White Pond Dam, that you can engage people if you're persistent, if you're transparent. And sometimes it's easier to engage the citizenry than the local politicians. But it takes both. Knowing the local politics and local figures is absolutely key to any kind of municipal work. And then it helps to have a broad community and not only the people that I've mentioned before, but I've been sort of tuning into these programs through the state does called Dam Busters, and the Mass River Alliance has done some programs, and then the National American Rivers, and their work and their presentations have been sort of inspiring and very, very helpful. So there are many other lessons, but those are key. And didn't know if you had any questions so far or thoughts. Feel free to, open up, and I'll try and answer them. And otherwise, we'll go on to the good stuff with other Dave.
Other good stuff. This was good stuff too, David.
Okay, other
Yeah.
good stuff. All right. Okay.
I want that picture of you with the tarantula, by the way.
Yeah, it's Cambodia.
Yeah. Oh,
It's quite a quite an adventure.
okay. Give me just one second here. All right. Can you all see the screen? Looking
Yep.
at one presentation page there.
We see presenter mode.
Cool. So you see, oh wait.
We see your mode, the behind the scene.
Oh, why is it over there? I'll just switch screens. That's okay.
There you go.
Okay. All right, let me go back one then. Sorry, I'm going to be looking over here now because it's that's where my presentation is. Um, okay, so yeah, so we this has been a very interesting project with multifaceted with photo video design work. So we can see here, so we're just talking about documenting the change at Homebrew Dam. The big two of the big ones on this project that were part of the scope were the time lapse and the intro or in the videos. So we'll go over those in a minute here. But this first shot, you can see a couple shots here from the time lapse. That's something that we worked with the team to identify certain trees and mount the time lapse on a tree, um, but without actually we did it in such a way that we weren't screwing into the tree, so we weren't damaging into the environment. But this was a really fun project. So we got um, as David had mentioned, this I think you mentioned in the last bit that you were just talking about, David, that this was a grant documentation requirement. And then you had said at one point the documentation is a big part of the purpose of the grant to be able to show what other towns happened, to other towns what happened. So with that kind of stakeholder engagement, working with the other peers and whatnot. So we've been really focusing on 5 different elements of the documentation. So that time lapse that I mentioned, that's been up since active since March 1st. So we got some snow because if you remember, we had a lot of snow this year. Um, the interviews is another part. We've done one video with different folks, different practitioners, and their perspective on things, um, and why the dam needs to be removed. And then at the end of the project, we're going to do a follow-up video to talk about how how things have progressed and what we're expecting. And this is how the river is kind of moving. So it just kind of closes off the project. In the interim, we've been doing a couple different things with photo and video. So whenever we're on site, we did capture the some photography and video for the actual deconstruction of the dam. And then whenever we're out on site, we try to get a couple other ground photos and video. But we've been really focusing on the intermittent aerial mapping for monitoring. This is a really big this is a really big tool here that we're going to go a little bit more in depth on. And then we've done a little bit of public facing design just to make it a little bit more digestible to people to kind of take the bits and segments. So we're reusing different elements that we're using for grant reporting and things like that to really make the whole documentation process a lot easier. We're using the library that we have. So this here, this is part of the aerial mapping. Now, the aerial mapping is something that we do with a drone, and we take a whole bunch of photos and we stitch them together to make basically a satellite image, but only a few hundred feet off the ground. So the fidelity of that is really clear. It's really the quality of the image is stellar. So these are two shots within less than a month. So this was July right here. You can see July. You can see that the water is still in behind the impoundment there. And then this was on July 27th, which was the main day that they opened up. So you can see how the river starts to show the channeling that it's going to have. Um, so that these were part of two different maps. And part of the advantage of doing this drone monitoring mapping is that you can just overlay everything's geo-referenced. So everything is very simple and very easy to overlay and line up, which is kind of one of the things that you'll see here, maybe a little bit. Um, throughout the throughout the progress of this project, we've expanded how far we've been making these aerial maps. And you can see the first one that we did in the winter, just to kind of get a baseline of the area. We only got just a rate. Let me see here. Actually, it's right here is the impoundment. So you can see it's pretty high up. We're not actually that high up off the ground. I think we're about 300 feet above ground level here, and we just take, I think this was about 600 photos or 500 photos. And then we expanded it a little bit in the beginning of July. You can see that there's more of the watershed here, not a ton more, but definitely more to get a little bit more context of how the water is flowing currently. And for the end of July, we ended up taking over 1,000 photos to stitch together to make this high fidelity photo. And you can see that there's a lot more here. You have a lot more of the watershed here. So the idea here is to show not only where the impoundment is or was, um, and what the lake looks like or the pond looked like, but then over the course of time, as we continue to go out over the next year or so, we'll be able to see if there is any change or deviation afterwards. And obviously, wintertime is easier to see because of the trees and whatnot. But um, one of the important things to note about this is you can see that this is expansive here. And this image right here, you guys can see my mouse, right? Yeah, okay. So this right here is the pond. And it looks like if you tried to zoom in, you wouldn't be able to see very well. But this is the same map. So you can see, I just rotated it. I flipped it just to make it a little easier for orientation. But this is the same image. And if you even wanted to say, like if Julie came to me and said, "Hey, what's this plant here? I can't quite see what that is." We have even higher resolution photos from the original drone shots. So this is such a multi purposeful tool that I'm very excited about for drone monitor or for monitoring, because monitoring in this space is usually such a challenge for to get budgeted or just hard to get people out and boots on the ground kind of thing. One of the other really big advantages of this is that, like I said, it's georeferenced. Every shot is georeferenced. And so you can pull that into things like to like ArcGIS or QGIS, and just drop them right onto the map. And so if you have multiple shots, like we had the three, one from winter time and then the two in July, those can be overlaid and you can switch back and forth or change the opacity, just like you can in GIS, so that you can see what's changed over time in a very clear and easy way, so that you can compare conditions across the repeated flights. You can add notes and boundaries, all that stuff. It's very, very cool. But I will say that these maps are not survey grade. These are not absolute accuracy. These are relative accurate. So they're within a few feet of where the actual location is, but more importantly, it's more accurate from one point on the map to another point on the map. So like the corner of the building to the edge of the impoundment, that's going to be relatively, accurate if you to take a measurement, but it's not the absolute accuracy of a land surveyor. And if you have anybody going out and doing these kinds of things or flying with the drone, I just want to mention that you do need to make sure that you have somebody on your team, if they are going out and doing flights, that they have an FAA certification for drone flying. That is a requirement. This is considered commercial use. So just make sure um, that if you're doing anything with drone work, that they're FAA certified. I've seen some folks get in trouble for that, and I just want to make sure nobody gets tagged that way. Okay, so I'm just going to hit play here. This is the very beginning. So this is March 1st, and it's sped up. This is the time lapse up until the 15th, so just last week. So it's sped up from the beginning, and then it slows down just about when we first cut off the trees, just on top of the dam there. And then it slows down even more so that you can see frame by frame kind of what's been going on. This we have a lot of control over. There's far more images than what I'm showing in this particular perspective, but just enough to get the idea, and not have the sunshine will flip around and make it a little bit difficult sometimes. But we can slow it down, we can speed it up. We have a lot of variation. This particular uh, time-lapse camera is one that I use a lot because it's solar powered, it's remote. So I can, right now, while we're on the meeting, I could go over there and I could uh, I could see what the status is right now. Every 2 hours, I have it taking a photo, and so we can see a relatively live status, and I can control that. Um, if I wanted to change it to every half an hour, I could do that. If I want to change it to every day, I could do that. And that's a really useful tool because I know that a lot of folks in conservation, they rely on trail cameras like the hunting trail cameras that people use for deer. And so you have to go out and you have to physically either change the battery or get the SD card in order to get that content. So this has been just priceless for this project, especially because it is hard to reach up in the tree. Um, so then the other part was the interviews that I mentioned. And so I think David or maybe Stephanie said that maybe we should play this here. It's about a minute and a half. So I'm going to play this for folks that haven't seen it, but it kind of just gives the introduction to the project. Can everybody hear that? Yeah? Yeah, okay.
It's a challenge to maintain. It's all old stone. The biggest concern is if it were to blow out and all the water in the pond were to all leave at once and create erosion. In terms of a safety and mitigation purpose, we would prefer to have it more under control and not have it there at all.
It's near a municipal well, and flooding of this dam could result in contamination of the well, which is a huge public health issue.
We're going to start with a very light touch, allow the stream to form its own course through the former impoundment, and then we'll be monitoring it to see if we need to do anything to sort of help correct where it's starting to go and adjust that course so that we don't have any impacts for the surrounding infrastructure. We're improving connectivity so that this river will connect between the Blackstone River through the West River and also down to Meadow Brook.
What's notable about this particular project is the collaborative nature of it. The more you can involve the community, get people understanding and connected to place, and that's also going to have future benefits down the road.
The town of Uxbridge, I think, has done a really fantastic job educating community members about this project. They've been really intentional about engaging school groups and senior groups. They've worked with the Blackstone River Watershed Association to do educational programs. They're working with the Blackstone River Coalition as well to do monitoring and looking at which species are here before and after this dam removal. So they do a great job bringing everybody together so that everyone knows about the project and what the benefits are.
Okay. So that was like I said, we have another video that's going to be coming out at the end, as I think it's sometime in June. We're going to record in May. And so that was just part of the storytelling. And that was, at least for me, it's a very special video. And then shout out, I think Steph had provided some of that footage from the actual like interacting with the kids. That's great. I love that stuff. And so, like I had said earlier, we have the same material can support the project in multiple different ways. And so we have a site conditions report that we put together, and then that flyer, the one that's it shows right here. So it says active removal, changing conditions, active removal, and then the what's next is it kind of talks a little bit of the slight little blurb, and then the QR code, just to make it very easy for people to see that video that we just watched. So it helps with grant reporting, partner updates, public education, future proposals, and then peer learning, of course. And so that's it. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to field anything. If not, we can go to the next thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a lot of updates to get through, so if
Yeah.
folks have maybe like one or two questions that they want to pitch. Sarah.
Thanks for this, y'all. I was just curious if you did encounter resistance or resistance from the community and how you handled that.
Not really. I mean, what I reached out to people upstream, property owners upstream, thinking they would have a real interest, but the topography is such that the upstream property owners would not be affected basically at all. In terms of the community at large, there was some interest, but no particular resistance. The resistance was, on a local political level about why you need to do this, how much is it going to cost? This is silly. We can go out there with an axe and a shovel one night and take it out. Those kinds of remarks were encountered. But that's, and because there weren't any real property issues, that's, I think, why we didn't encounter any resistance, because when you take down an impoundment, you remove a pond, basically, that many people might have, visual access to or attachment to, but we didn't have that kind of resistance because it just wasn't there. No property issues at all. If that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, good question, Sarah.
I have a quick question. Where is all this material, or where can it be found? Is it on the town website? Or
Not yet, no.
okay.
Yeah, we're working on getting a page up on our website as well about the project, but we haven't done it yet.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Rama.
So hi, when you decide the removal of the dam, how far you, in terms of water body, how far you consider evaluating which part is affected in terms of flooding or downstream or upstream? Is there any consideration of the length of water body that you consider before you take action on the removal of dam?
Yeah, part of the permitting process and the feasibility study is if I understand your question right, is a hydrological and hydraulic study, which looks at the conditions, the water conditions as they stand and the water conditions as they will stand after the removal. So that was an integral part of getting the whole project permitted, a requirement basically.
Okay.
Does that speak to your question?
Yes. So
Okay. Okay.
how far you, in terms of considering the length, downstream, upstream, how far you consider those? Any other connecting water bodies also you consider in terms of flooding if you end up removing this dam? Water levels?
No, I mean the study went from the top of the impoundment, which is basically a culvert which goes under a road, which is elevated above the level of the impoundment, and didn't go beyond that because of that elevated upstream flow. And then downstream looked at it, it quickly empties into the West River and it spreads out quite a bit into sort of a wetland area. I'm not sure in
Okay.
terms of feet how far it went down, but basically looked
Mhm.
at upstream and downstream.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I think that question is always different for every dam of the
Yes,
engineers determine what the area of influence will be, and then they scope their
Mhm.
study appropriately to understand that region.
exactly, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much to the Daves. If folks have other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and you guys can kind of poke on the side. We just want to get through some other updates that we have for you. Um, we took a tour of the Blackstone with the Regional Environmental Council with a group of kids there. It was a great experience. Um, I don't know if any of them had ever been on the river before. Most of them had never been in a canoe before, so that was exciting. But we got to explore various parts of the watershed. So we went up to the DCR Visitor Center and said, "What does the river look like here? Does this feel welcoming? Does this feel like somewhere you can get into the river?" What if it floods? What would happen here? And then we did the same thing at Riverbend Farm in Uxbridge and then down at Sycamore Landing um, in Rhode Island. So it was a really fun day. You can see this was when we had the wildfires, so we had that really weird sky. But they had a great time, and the last day we came back again afterwards, and we did sort of a redesign of what would you make that Worcester DCR Visitor Center look like, and each of these kids got into a group and they said, one kid said, there's a lot of unhoused populations here. I want to put a homeless shelter here. One kid said, I really need a basketball court, or we need a convenience store that's more accessible for this neighborhood. Everyone said, let's think about removing that dam. If it's not doing anything, we might have slightly influenced that by talking about the dams when we were there. But it was a just really fun experience. So we appreciate working with REC on that. Does anyone else have any academic partnership updates? Okay. For access, the big thing is that our Source to Sea celebration and paddle is coming up. So we will be paddling the river from September 10th to 13th. And so that last day, again, is that public paddle between Pawtucket and Providence. We invite you to come. I think we're about half full with our registrations already, which is pretty exciting. So please register if you'd like to go. We have about 35 spots available if you'd like to borrow a canoe, or we also have, you can bring your own paddleboard, canoe, kayak, whatever you'd like, and join us. It's totally free. At the end, as you guys know, you get a drink token, a t-shirt, and enjoy some really live music. We're sad to miss Kate's band this year. She will be away, who performed last year, but we are working with a two-piece band called Blackstone Soul, which is such a great name. So we're excited to have them. So thank you to our current sponsors, which we're very fortunate. We have quite a few of them. Horsley Witten, Ty and Bond, Blackstone Heritage Corridor, Narragansett Brewing, T Ford Company, Beta, Monkey Pod, Sumco, and 124 Productions. So Dave Grenier is also going to be going out and doing that same kind of really amazing drone footage of several parts of our paddle. So we will have these really lovely, rich images from all the way from kind of like the headwaters into or the Worcester kind of section into Rhode Island. So we're really excited for that and the videos that will come from it. So if you're interested in sponsoring, we still have some time available. We're closing sponsorships at the end of this month, so about another week. But we have levels between $250,000 all the way up to $5,000. So if you're interested, please reach out to me or Kevin. Anything else on access that folks want to mention? So for Bikeway Greenway, I have to admit, I'd never been on the Rhode Island section of the Bikeway. We recently last month did our Bikeway walk because so many folks the month before had said, what do you want to, what is sort of a goal this summer? And everyone said, I want to get on the Bikeway. And we're like, all right, let's transition our meeting to getting on the Bikeway. So thanks for everybody that came to that. And then a smaller group of us got out just this week and we biked about 10 miles exploring the Rhode Island portion of the bikeway and got to see all of these different areas where you can access the river from the bikeway and a lot of them have granite steps coming down. And a lot of them we don't have on our paddle guide currently. So these are all opportunities for another version of our paddle guide with additional information. And also it was an opportunity for our landscape architects Ben and Emily to also think about how can we make sure, how can we restore some of these existing access points in the erosion that's happening, but also how can we design new access points that we're working on now to think about this erosion that might happen and make them in a way that is less susceptible. So for anything else on Bikeway? For Fish Passage, I don't have an update here, but next month we will. So I know that DEM is currently working on their final memo that explores their preferred alternative of full dam removal of Elizabeth Webbing Dam and doing an in-river nature-like fishway. So that memo is currently under review. We'll hopefully get it in the next few weeks, and we will get it on our website as soon as we can, and it's final. But we're really excited about that. And I think it really proves the power of the Community Advisory Council because we advocated for that for a long time of considering full dam removal. And our engineers had thought, no, it's not possible. But when we pushed for years, they did the analysis and they said, wait a second, not only is this possible, this is actually our preferred alternative. And it wins in the categories across the board between water quality, recreation, dissolved oxygen, all the different things habitat. So we're really excited about that. So for water quality, we did have a CSO event. It was a decent sized storm. It was a lot of water all at once, which is these flashy storms are the hardest ones for our systems to handle. So not only did we have about 5 million gallons in partially treated CSO, but we also had 0.12, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 0.12 million gallons of untreated CSO. And again, we know that these CSOs are majority stormwater, right? We get them when it rains, so that is mostly stormwater, but it does contain some sewage potentially as well. So that's a concern. And we are working still on this CSO campaign. So we were on the Worcester City Council agenda for August 18th, but instead of being able to speak at that meeting, they referred us to the Department of Public Works Committee. So we're waiting on when that meeting will happen so that we can do a presentation on CSO to those counselors and ask the questions that we would like to know, which are around when is your next public engagement session? How are you incorporating public comments? And can you share your Kleinfelder report that explores what options you looked at, how effective they are at reducing CSO, what the cost is for both ratepayers and kind of the absolute cost, and also what consideration has there been for adopting a stormwater utility. That means those large landowners, often nonprofits like universities or hospitals or other large businesses, manufacturing, are paying their fair share of having so much impervious. If they manage it on site, great. But if they're putting it into our CSO system, we should be more careful, or our stormwater system at all. We should be careful about making sure that that's contributing. Anything on water quality? I know I'm going real fast. Okay. For restoration, we recently in July had a public meeting on the Superfund site in Cumberland, Rhode Island called the Peterson Puritan site, or OU2, Operating Unit 2. So this hadn't happened in a number of years, but EPA is cleaning up this site, and we worked with Friends of the Blackstone to organize this public meeting, get people together again, and talk about what potential reuse people would want to see. And it's really been helpful to get their feedback, and instead of just sort of having it come from a couple of different local advocacy groups, having it come from the residents themselves to say, you know, I really want ball fields. I really want hiking trails. I want to be able to get to the top of that giant, you can sort of see it here, this like giant hillside on the side of the Blackstone River in Cumberland, Rhode Island. And it's just such a unique view. It's a very Blackstone story of an old dump site that had been, um, abused into the river for a long time and really affect the river. And having it clean up, this is the largest environmental cleanup with EPA that's happening in New England right now. It's a massive site. But when you get to the top of that hill, not only can you see this really neat view of the Blackstone River on one side, but on the other side, there are all of these beautiful ponds and wetlands that you wouldn't really be able to see otherwise. So we want to make sure that we can have access at this site, but we need an owner to step forward and manage the property in order to allow that public access. So it's been a challenging, contentious project for years. And we are working to help facilitate all of these different parties to make sure that something good happens in the end and it doesn't simply just get fenced off away from the public. We've told you before that we got funding from the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program to perform sediment testing on the Blackstone. And we selected EA Engineering to help us with that as our consultant. So they've completed the QAP. It is pending approval from EPA. And Kaylee and Kevin went out to look at all of the different sites where we are proposing to do sampling to make sure we can actually get there. And Kaylee, I don't know if you want to add anything here.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. Yeah, we went out in the field and we looked at a few spots where we were like, can we get in the river here? Maybe, maybe not. And yeah, it's all just like good information to have too, to incorporate into the paddle guide, or like when we're paddling, kind of these emergency access points that it's not necessarily the best place to get into the river, but if there was something that happened in that stretch and there's not another takeout, it's good to know that we have other kind of options and points that we can use. So yeah, all good information to have.
Yeah. It's funny because we often understand the river from the river, but we don't always understand the river from the land. So we are trying to get better at that and put ourselves in context. We were on the bikeway the other day. We were like, oh yeah, I remember this spot. So it's definitely different, which also means if you've never experienced the river from the river, it's very different. We'd love to show you. We also recently had a meeting about the Hayward Landing dam removal projects in Douglas. And thanks to Dave for joining and taking photos there. So we met with some residents and some local community members in general that asked a lot of really great questions. And surprisingly, maybe I shouldn't say surprisingly, but happily surprisingly, maybe, everyone was really supportive. We got a lot of good questions, but nothing negative. Which was pretty nice. So that project is moving along. We are currently funded through EEA's Dam and Seawall program and Narragansett Bay Estuary program to permitting and that permit level design and permitting. So we're working through the permitting now, and we will soon be exploring funding for final design and implementation. So keeping an eye out for that. Anything else on restoration? Almost done giving our updates, and then I'll hand it off to you guys. So this is a really big one, actually. I almost feel like we should have just led with this just as an FYI. You probably have heard, but the collaborative was recently designated as a DER restoration partnership through their partnership program. And we're one of 6 now in the state. There were 3, and then they just had another 3 join. And we're really, really excited about this because not only does it provide long-term funding for our program, so it's a 5-year program, but you can re-up it at the end of that 5 years for another 5 years. It's kind of unheard of to have 5 to 10 years of grant funding. But also it means that we have a really direct connection into DER and the technical assistance that they provide. So we can kind of tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, there's this thing that came up. We're not really sure what to do. Who do we go for this? Can you help us sort of navigate this question or process? And they're there to help us. So we're very, very excited about this. And it's also a lot of opportunity for peer learning with our other watershed organizations who are going through this as well. So Merrimack, Berkshire's Clean, Cold Connected, and Buzzards Bay were the original three that have been doing this for about 6 years now. And then the Charles River Watershed Association's partnership and also Ipswich were recently designated with us. So thank you to DER for believing in us and supporting us. This is a game changer. So we have also, just for transparency, we always like to kind of keep you posted on our grants. Kaylee helped the town of Grafton apply for a MassDOT program for culvert replacement on Merriam Road. So we've helped get this project funding in the past for design, and we're trying to further that project. And we also anticipate on applying to NBEP's open RFP for water quality habitat restoration enhancement. So we unfortunately were not awarded funding from EEA's Dam and Seawall program to repair the canal breach in Northbridge, which that's an area where the river runs down and it should kind of jog and kind of go around, but instead it ran into the canal wall. And over time, we think in the mid 80s, there was a big storm that came through and breached that canal wall, and it's just been growing wider and wider. So too much water goes into the canal, it erodes it, it affects DCR's trails. They often have to close them, they flood. There's a concern that it would affect sewer infrastructure that is being exposed, that is in the bank of that canal. So there's a lot of potential bad there. And it also means that not enough water goes into the natural river. And so it goes very, very dry. And that affects habitat and water quality in the river. So by repairing that canal breach and keeping the canal water separate at this location and having that water in the river stay in the river, we would be getting a lot of different benefits, from historic preservation of the canal to water quality to recreation to avoiding a sewer infrastructure fail, lots of things. So we look forward to applying to that grant. And as a heads up, if you guys are applying for that grant too, we are happy to support you. It is due in October. Okay, I ran through. Now it's up to you guys. Actually, nope, sorry. We have a few things that partners asked us to share that I will run through real quick. So Mass Rivers, if you haven't heard, they're having a Dam Busters conference coming up on September 18th. This is a free conference and it's going to be, I think, pretty good. They do a good program, and there's a lot of really wonderful speakers that will be talking about various case studies, and it's a little bit of everything from, how to do project management on a dam removal to what are the permitting considerations that I need to know? What are sort of obscure funding opportunities that maybe most of us aren't aware of? So it's going to be a really good one. We encourage you to attend that. Also, I wanted to say a big congrats to the Steve and Ed and everybody else who put on River Palooza. It was a really fun time. They did a great job getting all these different bands together. And I was very happy to get this picture at the end here of Steve and Ed just rocking out to one of the bands. But it was wonderful. I just got my t-shirt in the mail the other day, so looking forward to more. And they've already booked next year for August 7th, I think it is. So save the date, and we'll see you at next year's River Palooza.
Real brief, I have not done a great job of reaching out to all the environmental folks that were there. I'm still in the process of reaching out to everybody. That was the biggest part of the day in my eyes, was starting to showcase and highlight all of the great work that's going on around the river. And that's the piece that we're going to grow next year. So thank you for coming, and we look forward to more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Great. Just to throw it out there also, if you're in Massachusetts or if you're in Rhode Island and just want to learn about Mass, the Mass FM, their floodplain management conference is coming up on October 19th. Another really great conference that has a little bit of everything floodplain related. It's a great networking opportunity and learning opportunity. So we encourage you to go to that. And that one's pretty inexpensive as well. I can't remember the exact cost. Almost done. We have a stormwater expo coming up. So the Rhode Island Green Infrastructure Coalition, working with the Stormwater Innovation Network and Providence Parks Department, they always have this great conference at Roger Williams Park, the Stormwater Expo. It includes like site walks around the site, looking at different green infrastructure practices, as well as tabling and speakers and sort of typical presentation. So um, it's a great one. That one's very inexpensive as well. I think it's like $10 or something, very cheap. Here's another one from we're working with the SNEP network and the Crucial Conversations for Mastering Dialogue. They're doing a training it's 2 full days, September 23rd and 24th, here in the Blackstone watershed in Whitensville. So it's open to community members and community leaders that are within the SNEP network area. It's a free training. You just have to sort of be qualified as, yes, I'm in this watershed and I work on these kinds of issues, but it really helps people manage conversations on very challenging, high emotion kind of projects. So dam removal is definitely one of those. So if this is something that you work on or you want to expand into working on and you want more training on this sort of facilitation skills, I'd really recommend this one. You do have to commit to being there all day, both days, but it's a wonderful training and it is free. So thank you, Snap Network, for putting that on. Okay, now I'm actually done and I will hand it to you guys if you have updates or if there are other things you want to talk about.
I have an update on our grant programs.
Yeah.
So we released the 604B Water Quality Management Planning Grant RFP this past Wednesday. So anyone that is interested in doing any watershed planning, water quality assessment, things like that, that grant is open. Proposals are due on October 7th. And we're targeting to release the 319 implementation grant RFP on September 2nd, sometime around September 2nd. And that will be due the end of October. So if anyone's interested in either of those grants, you can visit our website. I'll pop the link in the chat or you can email me.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, that's a great one. I know we're working on a 604B grant right now with CMRPC. And Cheryl, I don't know if you stepped away or if you're still in the call. I know that you had sent that out and I wasn't sure if that was something that you were interested in specifically within your community of exploring that 604B watershed-based plan.
Oh no, I just saw it and I thought it might be of interest. That's all.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you very much. Definitely a good one. Do folks have other updates that they'd like to share or questions? I feel like if I just extend my awkward silence, someone will say something. You got nothing. Y'all want to go back to your day. That's okay.
You quieted us all down.
This is the best part of my day.
Yeah, right.
Steph, I
That's
can
so
just share. Oh,
sure.
sorry.
Go
All right,
ahead.
so it worked for me, the awkward
Yeah, I
silence.
love it.
I will just share that. Mass Audubon partners with Worcester Public Schools, in particular the seventh grade cohort, with field trips, and they are centered around watershed and relationships between people and the brook that runs through the sanctuary, as well as water in general. And I've had a chance to kind of thought partner with Heather Perry around integrating some macroinvertebrate study into this program. It's historically been like a one-time visit to the sanctuary, so all the seventh grade cohort comes on various days throughout the fall. But thanks to funding from a settlement, we're hoping to expand that and do some pre and post visits with a smaller cohort of the seventh grade graders, and yeah, so always looking for like more ideas or partnerships, and if anyone's interested in chatting about options or ways to integrate uh, content around watershed health and human relationships with water, welcome. Always welcome that opportunity. So thank you for just the chance to share that. And I can put my email in the chat in case anyone wants to connect and talk further, to brainstorm or be a thought partner.
Sarah,
Yeah.
I'll reach out for if you need any assistance with like documenting, like taking photos for it, just to kind of like share in different resources. Because that's really cool. I know that's always a challenge, especially when it comes to younger folks. So
Thank you, Dave.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. We're happy to also help if you ever want a collab speaker. But feel free to reach out when it makes sense to have us come in and we're happy to chat.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Rama?
Oh, this is not a question. I'm looking for more information. If anybody conduct any kind of data collection in Blackstone with respect to emerging contaminants.
That is not
No.
something that we do really, unfortunately. So
Okay.
the folks who have the most data on water quality are the Blackstone River Coalition. So Heather Perry runs that program. I'm happy to connect you with her. I don't know off the top of my head everything that they're testing for, but I know it's things like temperature, turbidity, dissolved oxygen, and then they document like whether there's trash, odor, things like that.
Oh.
But we don't have any emerging contaminants
Um,
or anyone
because
doing that.
in the last slide you mentioned that there is a sediment testing. I think I have posted in the chat and somebody kind of replying that they are doing PCBs and PAHs. So this is also I'm kind of interested in that data. Just share with me if you have any kind of old data that exists.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're doing that because of the lack of data.
Yeah.
Kaylee had done a lit review of what sediment testing had been completed in the last like 40 years in the watershed, nearly 50 years. The best data set we had was from 1980, and it was still pretty incomplete. And there wasn't it wasn't enough information to say like, yes, we understand sediment quality. So that's what we have proposed. We're going to be looking at 19 different sites along the main stem in Massachusetts and doing that test of the sediment specifically for PAH, PCB, um, heavy metals, grain
Oh,
size.
why you did not include PFAS in that? Because we was also kind of prone towards sediment.
Mm-hmm. One reason is cost. So we are trying to keep our costs low because we only have so much money and we really wanted a pretty comprehensive range. We know that this is more of a step one. We're not stopping here. We just needed to start somewhere. And so that's our
Yes.
starting point. We likely will also sample for VOCs at least at one site just so we can see how to do it. But yeah, and our concern on the Blackstone, a lot of it is industrial contaminants and historic legacy contaminants. So that was what our focus was on.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Definitely more opportunity though.
And to inform you, like we are also conducting some 6-ppdq, the thyroid chemicals analysis across different rivers and streams. And Blackstone is also one of the site that we are collecting the samples. I think probably this year, in the coming few months.
Yeah, maybe we can connect offline about that and learn a bit more about your programming and how we can maybe shadow that and watch or learn more.
Yeah, sure. We'd like to share the data if you're kind of interested once the study is done.
Absolutely. We are all about transparency and data sharing. So everything that we learn will be public and we'd be happy to learn more about yours. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Cheryl.
Hi. So that that study that Brown University did for us a couple of years ago, did they not do sediment testing in that? Do you guys have that?
So there that a lot of that's not on the Blackstone main stem, but yeah, so Cheryl does have some sediment testing that's more recent. I don't know if you tested for PFAS within that or not.
I don't
I
think
can't.
so. We're
Okay.
looking for industrial, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but that is part of the literature review that Kaylee had performed, looking at all the different sediment studies that have been done. So we're happy to share that. We part of the consultant's work in doing the sediment testing is also taking all of the data that Kaylee's put together, and there's this massive, massive spreadsheet, and just sort of like QAing it, and making sure that it's something that we feel comfortable actually sharing and is pretty clean. And Kaylee, I see you're off here if you want to jump in.
Yeah, sorry, had to transition to my car. But yes, neither Steph nor I specialize in sediment. Definitely not my forte is like chemistry and all of that. So, I did my best with the historical review. Part of what we're doing with the consultant is reviewing all of the data that I've collected and the database that I made of all of the historical data that we have. So we're going to have somebody who knows a little bit more kind of parse through it and draw some real conclusions from that. Although I think the main takeaway, like Steph said, is there's just not enough data, which is why we're doing this sediment uh, study on the main stem. So,
Yeah, thank you. And I know Danielle had to pop off, but she mentioned that that same NBP habitat restoration water quality enhancement RFP that's open right now. So I think it's due on October 2nd or 7th, early October, if folks are interested. Anything else that folks want to ask or share? Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to the Daves for presenting and talking about homebrew. Thanks, Judy, for the reminder that we should get that webpage up and running pretty soon. We've got a lot of website updates going on right now. And we will see you at our next meeting, which I don't have that off the top of my head, but next third Friday of the month at 10. We'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.